It's 7:04, and we're kind of bare bones tonight. I know that Eric and Stacy are not going to be able to attend this evening, and Wayne told me he was going away on May 12th, but why he thought he may have meant he was going away and not going to be here for this meeting.
Eric
So we'll
Cindy.
Stacy.
Stacy.
Stacy. So it may just be us this evening. So
You have other things
before,
to talk about just besides
huh?
what we were doing, right? You
Yeah.
have an agenda.
So before we get started tonight, I'll just quickly go through what I'm hoping we touch on. We've got gentlemen from Wisdom House here to talk about their project, which is what we'll lead off with.
Gentlemen.
I heard you cough.
We'll follow that up with reviewing and hopefully approving the work plan, which we discussed at our last meeting. We'll do a check-in with our zoning subcommittee, zoning task force. We have to come up with a group name. Hopefully we'll talk about doing some tabling at the farmers market to do some community outreach, and then we'll do liaison updates, other business stuff. And it doesn't look like we have any public comments, so we can jump right in. We've got Bill Butler and Michael Oman from Wisdom House to talk about their projects. Have you all met? I'm sure you
I met
you a couple nights ago.
and Frederica Keating and Richard Hankins, and we just met, SJ Doobie.
met
It's
you at a
nice to
bar.
meet you. You did meet me at a bar. But I've had a lovely time going to housing conferences with your significant
she's
other.
brilliant.
She is brilliant. Anyway, so I'm going to turn the tables over to you all. Let me share your presentation.
So Michael's gonna do some slides and stuff, and if we have time, I brought the latest architectural drawings. Everything's in motion. But you can see kind of where we're at. So if we have time, I have those. Also, we're all happy to meet with people if you got some time. This is what Michael and I are doing this year.
Right.
Yeah, we should get a group of Jericho Center people over to our house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you come to my house, you can sit in a room that's very similar to what we're designing. You see my living room, it
Yeah.
looks like that, that's what.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
as part of it. Many choices.
Take it away.
Okay, get out of this for a moment, please, for talking. Okay, my name is Michael Oman, it's Bill Butler. We're here to talk a bit about Wisdom House. And basically Wisdom House is a group of people we're interested in putting together some housing. We're interested in locating in a Riverside area. We are incorporated as an L3C. And
LC.
L3C.
It's an LLC with a community driver.
It's a Ben and Jerry's Corporation, which is, you
Like
know.
a B Corp kind of a thing. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's the idea is that many corporations have run into trouble by virtue of doing something other than just returning as much money as possible to the shareholders.
Yeah.
And the L3C designation is basically a for-profit corporation with a social driver, so that doing something worthwhile is a defense for how we're spending money. So we're incorporated as an L3C. And it originally came up with, I might as well sort of go ahead, I guess, to the next one. I'll give you sort of the origins of where we came from. We're a bunch of people who that's JCAT, right? I mean, it's been all over kind of Richmond and Jericho and so on, a little bit in Underhill, I think. People eating breakfast together, just some old guys sitting around talking and say, well, what are we going to do with our lives now as we're getting older? And, you know, we want to be in our communities and so on. We've got larger houses than we really need now in many instances, so on and so forth. So we're interested in doing something, and we want to be able to get some services and stuff in, but we don't want assisted living. None of us want to move into an institutional.
We want to be warehouse.
Right, no warehousing for us. So that's, and we want to stay here in the communities. And we're interested also, none of us are particularly wealthy, so we're going to try to work out something that actually works for sort of middle income kind of thing. So that, well, what are we going to be able to do about this? So we're going to try. This basically resulted in, we're describing it as our sort of first Venn diagram, a perfect storm of things coming together. With the town trying to do some significant development associated in town and trying to make some real, make a real community really at in the Riverside area. Our personal goals for how we wanted to live and the whole demographic sort of wave coming along. I happen to be the leading edge of the baby boom, for good or ill. And you know, we're all arriving on everybody's doorstep right now, and we're going to have to be dealing with it. And so, and where these things come together, we see as kind of the place where Wisdom House is trying to operate, and it has expanded a little bit on that. But so I wanted to touch a bit on Jericho's piece in all of this. First, Jericho has spent an enormous amount of time planning for the Flats area, trying to figure out exactly how it wants to handle things, working on that. And basically, I go into the next one, I guess. I got involved with this in 2005. I've been a transportation planner. I was the transportation planning director for the MPO for a number of years. So I did some transportation planning work with the folks in the Flats planning. There have been forums and charrettes and every possible thing to gather information from what the community wants to achieve there, how to work on it, and that sort of thing, since literally the early aughts, and up until things have been started coming together in the late teens. So, and as a result of that, Jericho came up with a vision for what it wants to develop there, and it's really quite I think it's a great vision. It's for an intensively developed community center with real life and vitality and its uses, densities that are not normally encountered in this part of the world, that sort of thing. A real village community center with some real life to it and that sort of thing. And this is the vision that the community has basically embraced for this area. So that said,
Is there a similar plan on the Underhill side?
there is not.
There's not.
Actually, I've tried to talk them into doing something like that, but of course, you may or may not be aware. Are you aware of the Harvest Crossing kind of effort and that sort of thing? So there's an effort to do something with that. But I've tried to tell them that if they really want to build more stuff and put it in the villages and keep it out of the rural areas, then they really need to think about what they want to develop in the villages when they develop. And they have not thought that through, but and nothing at the level of what the Jericho did. And I would say it's effectively sort of, they really haven't thought it through.
Both sides figured out how to do nothing.
Yeah, well, there is that. We're trying to get away from it.
We're going alone.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to get beyond that. But so what I wanted to say is what we found here at the Flats, in the Flats area, and so on, there is a real common vision. And this is, I wanted to put this little unusual Venn diagram there to suggest there is an enormous and unusual degree of overlap between the goals and visions and stuff that are active here. One is, of course, on the part of the town, what the town is trying to accomplish. Another, what our group Wisdom House is trying to accomplish, and also what the owner, Greg Tatro, is trying to accomplish there. And there's a huge amount of overlap. And what we're trying to achieve is this idea of a vital community center. It's a lot of residents and that sort of thing, but with real life to it. It's got a pencil. It's got to have an economic and financial viability associated with it. It can't be just sort of a, we're just such wonderful people and everybody will just flock to us. We got to make it work. We want it to be an economic and social attractor for this larger area and beyond. This is going to be a real center that has real life to it. Some things that we think are really important to keep in mind are, one, pride of place. And I'm not one who likes to tax things, but I think that this is a really important idea. We are trying to create something that we really think highly of here. We want this to be our achievement, if you will. We want to be the real pride, and that means pride, and it also means place. Place is a real thing. To actually build a place that people identify and feel like this is a real thing. I threw in beautiful because a lot of people leave out the aesthetic qualities that are associated with it. We think that that's very important. Also, a legacy project that would be built to last. We don't want to throw up this, sort of something trashy that's going to be falling down in a few years and really reflecting badly on all of us. So, moving right along, Wisdom House at Riverside. This is where we are looking to locate it. Or we, looked at a couple of options, but very quickly, when we heard that there was something really potentially happening here, we gravitated right toward it because in a place where we're going to be putting a lot of seniors, it's really great to be able to walk to everything that you want to get to. I mean, we're within walking distance of everything right there. There's right, that piece back behind them. So, well, let me see, is that, actually where we're looking at is not on that picture, is not in that picture.
It's tending towards it.
It's off that side, but right there, we got the library, we got the schools, we got the post office, we've got the market, we've got, all the stuff out on Route 15, all within easy walking distance. It's centrally located in both Underhill and Jericho, so it really connects to both communities. We've got some people in both communities who are interested in it. We've already got GMT bus service there. It's not exactly, a magnificent service, but it's there and has the potential for expanding. The town is committed to really doing something interesting here. So, and the Greg Tatro, the landowner, has been very visionary and committed to making something happen. I mean, he told us when we first got together with him, he said he wants this to be his legacy. He wants to be able to drive by there. I guess he goes by there quite a bit.
He wants to live with us.
Well, there was that too, but I am always skeptical about that. But nonetheless, he said he wants to be able to drive by there and say, I had a hand in that. That's what I did, and I think he feels very important about that. And the other thing that I think is important and that people tend to forget is that the residential, we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but the residential development that we're talking about is a major source of support for the non-residential stuff that wants to locate there. It's very hard to locate commercial services and that sort of thing outside of the service center, but with adequate residential density, literally within walking distance. If you want, we can talk more about that. I did a lot of that back in my old days, back in the Massachusetts area. It really provides support for that. And so Wisdom House as the first thing going in would be an anchor for the whole development and an impetus for other development to take place on the site. So we like that idea. So Wisdom House, what are we thinking about? The Wisdom House vision, what is it? So we are looking at about 50 units plus or minus. And we're looking at a mix of condo apartments and cottages or bungalows. People call them different things. At the moment, the mix looks like it's running about 60-40 toward the condo end, the multifamily end. It had been 50-50 for a while, but when people started seeing the multifamily building that we were talking about building, everybody said they wanted to live there, and we're wondering if we're going to be doing. But we do have some people who are still interested in the singles, I think. So we're
Can you say that again? I just want to make sure that it picked up on the recording. When people saw the multifamily unit,
right,
they wanted to live there.
Right.
And that demand has shifted.
right,
Your 50-50 to 60-40.
right.
Love.
And talking about that. So, well,
And are those folks in Jericho currently?
oh yeah, everybody's in Underhill and Jericho right now. That's all the people we've been talking to. So they like the idea. So well, you'll see why, I think, when we get to it. And
I'm all for it.
I think you'll like the drawing.
yeah, I think you'll like the graphics.
That has big implications for us too.
Absolutely, sure, it really does. So we're looking for this affordable market rate kind of idea, middle income. We do believe that nobody wants to live in what people are calling the senior ghetto. So we're not really calling this senior housing per se, although that's obviously we're trying to get ourselves taken care of, et cetera, et cetera.
Every unit will be built with seniors in mind, not necessarily that they're seniors that will live there.
Right.
But if if it becomes open, condo becomes open, a senior could move in because it's designed like that.
And you mean just for accessibility?
Yeah,
for-
accessibility, right.
Flow through kitchen,
Yeah.
no traps in the bathroom,
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
No level changes, grab bars, doors that are adequate for, wheelchairs if you need them, that sort of thing. So, yeah, when you design it right in from the beginning, it's not an
No
enormous.
doorknobs.
Yeah.
Well, here's the
Well,
thing, a shaped doorknob. is
Okay.
different.
Yeah.
So we're thinking.
Yeah,
about
we're working very closely with a very nice team of architects, helping
Yeah.
us, make this happen, and they know where we're going, so. They're working with us to achieve that. Even though that we don't want assisted living, we want the ability to bring some services in to help with people as they get older, because we don't want to move out as soon as things start to get a little tough. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We're looking at something called the village model of services for that. We're also looking at a very supportive community itself. It's almost a hybrid co-housing kind of thing where we all help one another as well as, so we get enough people all in the same place, somebody can do something associated with it. And we want to be able to stay in a community where we have networks, family and friends and so on. This is what we're trying to achieve here, and this is the way we're trying to achieve it. So furthermore, so the cottage units, we have not got designs for those on the table yet. I included a couple of kind of examples of things that we're talking about, the small cottages on Cape Cod Islands. The one is on Nantucket here, and the other little group is a Martha's Vineyard thing. They're modest cottages, bungalows, not enormous, but not cramped either. So we're looking at places where people can really stay and have single family access. Some people are going to want a little bit more garden space around and that sort of thing. We're trying to provide for a variety in this, but
What is the square footage on the basic?
we're looking at roughly 1,200, maybe plus or minus for that sort of thing for that. So yeah, it's a nice size unit.
It's pretty big.
We're hoping they'll have, so people.
Well, yeah, would have, yeah.
Yeah, if there are elderly people don't want to walk outside and.
Yeah, we're expecting the bungalows would have garages. I'm pretty sure of that. But we'll be handling the parking slightly differently and the multi. So that's what we're looking at that. But the core of what we're looking at is the multifamily, and these are some models on which we built it. One is, and this is probably the key feature, is we're looking at an internal arcaded kind of street, an atrium situation that will be skylit and open to gardening and that sort of thing. That's the picture on your left. That's comes from a co-housing community in British Columbia. But we're also thinking as things get pretty big, we want a kind of a model that people can think in terms of, because one of the things that Jericho has been trying to achieve is a traditional New England village feel. So we wanted to say, how can a large building like this fit in with something that's been predominantly thought of as having small buildings in it? So the kind of paradigm that comes immediately to mind is the New England country inn, village inn, which are often centerpieces for communities and that sort of thing. The one that we've illustrated here, which actually is something moderate, fairly close to the size that we're looking at, the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge, Mass. And although this is shows 3.5 stories, and we're working from 3 stories.
There were some buildings pretty close to this size in that neighborhood.
Yes,
It might be interesting for you to get pictures from maybe
Yes.
Gary Irish, just to,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
people-
that would. But I mean, right now, the ID school has roughly the same footprint as the building that we're looking at.
yeah,
Although that's a 1.5 story kind of thing. But the Browns River Middle School, which is right there, would dwarf our building, and it's part of our neighborhood right where we are. So it's not like we're talking about something that's completely out of character with what's already even there just today. And, we're trying to be careful in terms of what we actually, the way we deal with it to look like something.
And you said 2 stories?
We're looking at 3 stories.
3.
Plus a parking.
Yeah, and parking underneath it, that comes.
Just backing up, anybody who hasn't been to this place, the Red Lion in Stockbridge, you should go see it. It's remarkable.
Yeah, it's wonderful place. So anyway, but that's our mental model, if you will, for what we're thinking in terms of that.
this is for the condos.
Yes, the condo, it'd be in a multifamily building.
It's gonna be a little more streamlined than that. That's,
Yeah, that's got obviously a lot of, nooks and crannies that it's gonna be difficult to deal with, but. So anyway, an earlier, design for this very building. Bill will show you some ones that have been developed since we put together this, but this was a very early version of what we're looking at. Shows the Wisdom House Great House. It's 2 floors of residential above with some roofish recreation space associated with it. And the first floor is we're really looking at, how much, whether we need to do some units on the first floor, garden units, some commercial on the first floor. We are looking at restaurant and common facilities there. It would have an elevator, it would have a lobby, and so on and so forth. We intend for parking to be under the structure. We can locate adequate parking for the entire structure and for a parking space per unit under the structure. That way, everybody has weather protected access to their vehicles. And instead of building paved parking lots, we set our building in a garden. And that's very important.
the parking lot is a garden.
Right, we change it over. We have captured our parking lot for our
So
garden.
that is roughly the same mass as the senior housing in Fairfax.
I'm not familiar with that one, but I'll go check it out.
You really should.
Yeah, I
It's,
will.
it's, and I interviewed 2 ladies who came out the other day and they love it. Asked them where they're from. I'm from Richmond. I'm from Jericho. I couldn't find anything. Now where I'm up here.
Well, we're.
And we
looking
love
at that. Yeah.
Senior housing in Fairfax?
Yeah,
Does that have a name?
no, but it's,
Okay,
We'll
yeah,
definitely check it out.
I can send you a picture.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah,
And it actually looks very much like that.
okay.
and so that's just the elevation associated with it. So this is kind of what actually makes it work. The internal structure is a garden too.
Don't leave this yet, though.
What's it?
Yeah, we want to put, there's a problem with the zoning. They don't want flat roofs. Down in the riverside. We're designing in actual terraces that people can go up and even sunset, stuff like that. So we're gonna have to have a little discussion.
Yeah, and what constitutes a flat roof as opposed to deck space and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll be working on that, but that's a piece of this puzzle. So moving on to the next one. This is one of the reasons why people are thinking about they would like to live there. This is basically the first residential floor. It is an arcaded open space garden inside, so that when winter comes and we're dealing with winter in Vermont, we'll have an inside garden that we can spend a lot of time in as opposed to waiting for the outside gardens when the good weather comes around. And there's a section through that, so you can see how the whole thing is structured with the 2 residential floors above, the common space, program space, and potential garden units below, and parking below that. There's
storage.
Storage, right? Storage for each unit and a parking space for each unit under the building. So that's the plan as of this time, so that everybody will have. Basically, everybody will be in structured parking. I mean, they won't be having to go outside and scrape ice and snow up there.
They all will have electrical house.
Yeah.
How large
That's
do you
the plan.
think the units are gonna be?
How large?
Yeah,
Well, we started out with a 1,200 square foot module. Now we're fiddling with that. We need to adjust that a little bit and so on and so forth. But again,
is
the
it
12
meant for 2 people?
yeah, that was the basic idea that, but 1,200 is enough for more than 2.
Yeah,
But
because seniors don't generally come in more than 2.
more than right. But we're not limiting it to seniors either. So
Right.
in some instances, we'll be looking at having options for people. We don't want to live in as has been stated before, a senior ghetto. That's not what we're trying to do. But we shouldn't forget too, this is a relatively small portion of a much larger site. We're looking at 5 or maybe 6 acres on a 15.5 acre site.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot more going on than just us.
No, the reason I bring that up is because again, the size has a lot to do with the cost of
Yeah,
the unit.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have.
We're coming square to terms with that right now. So now we're gonna handle it. And
We're gonna make some
So on.
smaller.
yeah, there'll be some smaller units and that sort of thing. So
So we're trying to figure out what size house we want to really incentivize in terms of smaller houses.
right.
And so that, I mean, that, so our question is sort of wrapped up in,
Yeah.
and we're very interested in hearing what you're hearing back. But we're looking at Sunnyview, which is 1,000 square feet. And Lafayette Drive, which is 960 square feet.
Right.
And we're saying, well, you know, let's really incent ones that are 1,000 and under, but if you're at 1,200, it makes us like.
Well, there will
A
be,
little bit small.
there will be some 1,200, right? I mean, that was like an initial module, you know, when we're at the stage where, you know, and we just
Got it.
cookie cutter 1,200 square foot around it, and that's a
Yeah.
nice size. It's neither too big nor too small, and that's where we work from
Yeah,
to develop our mix, and that's one of the things.
it's big relative to a surprising amount of the housing
Oh, yeah, yeah.
in Jericho.
Oh, yeah.
In order to make an accessible unit, does it need to be a bit larger to accommodate wider door
Again, I
frames and?
don't think so, but we have not designed them at that level yet. We're looking at we're trying to develop the mix. I feel very confident that our architectural team can make sure we get doorways and stuff like that. We aren't dealing with a lot of long hallways or anything.
Okay, so that didn't factor into the
Yeah,
1,200.
that has not been, no, that has not been part of that. It was a mental
Yeah,
kind of a starting point for the basic module, what we wanted to work with, and then use that as a point of departure as we refine our mix. Like I said, when we first started out, we were thinking 50%, you know, no more than 50% of the people would want to be living in the multifamily, and then we show what we can do with the multifamily. People are like, hey, you know, I like the idea of, you know, having a garden in February.
And that's not part of your square footage.
Right.
This meeting, this place here is all,
mm-hmm.
nothing's extra.
It's common.
But it's common space plus we're planning an extensive garden around it.
Right.
But whatever you're living in, you also are living in a garden.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole thing.
And we think that that's important about what we're trying to accomplish. We really do. It's like a critical piece of it. So anyway, try one more. What comes next? Yes. So that said, that's the basic vision. We did try to build this on the basis of a real sense of market. Now you guys are probably aware that you can probably sell anything that you can bring on for at least a semblance of decent amount of money. But we still thought it was important to have a look at the market. So we identified what's known as the primary market area for this type of development, which is right at the juncture between Underhill and Jericho. There's a thing called the primary market area, and that is basically defined as the area from which you expect to achieve 80 to 85% of your patronage and draw and so on. So there's also some things in terms of accessibility. A fairly common analysis like this for both residential and some commercial is 5 to 10 miles or 10 to 30 minutes would define a primary market area. So that basically, especially when you realize that all of the access in Underhill and Jericho tends to run kind of north-south. There's very little, it's interesting, not so much to the sides, so that the lines of communication work that way. So it really looks like the primary market area really is Underhill and Jericho. So we're looking at 80 to 80, expecting under normal circumstances. Now, that said, I'm sure if Connecticut finds out that this is available, we may have.
We're not going to average.
We're not going to tell them at least at the outset. So, you know, we'll see where that goes.
Do you think it'll all open at the same time or will be phased in?
We have not gotten that far yet. My guess is that basically this particular building now we're talking about, well, gee, this could be a model for other buildings on the site as a way to develop other things on the site or whatever. But this building is kind of a unit.
Yeah.
It'll be difficult to do much, you know, basically those units are going to get done roughly the same time. Now, some of the cottages and bungalows, I think, may be done
Probably see.
yeah, that'll sequence a little bit differently, but you know, for this one, I expect it more or less will be early on and this will be, and pretty much be about the same.
I think they'll be pre-sold.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think we're gonna have any problem there. So we started out doing this analysis, and then we basically did, a straight up market analysis associated with it based on population projections for Underhill and Jericho. We
It's
estimate-
really surprising to me to limit it to just Underhill and Jericho.
We already have 30.
We could have, yeah, we got 30
I mean,
people.
it's like people
Fair.
they said, I want in.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about it.
Yeah, and part of it really is to provide this resource for us to have this network, and that means there are others. I mean, that thread running through everything that we're doing is right there.
It's our community.
Yeah, exactly. So we're trying to provide that service to our community. We see this as a real service, and we'll kind of hit that.
And so are you doing some kind of restrictions through deed or anything like that to make sure that you're getting people from this area?
No, but
or-
I'll tell you, the plan right now is to.
And is it legal to kind of handpick your community?
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna start a waiting list. This summer, when I'm planning, I think we're talking about going out and forming, just basically letting people buy their way onto a waiting list to give us a little bit of working capital for, not too much money, for $1,500 or something like that. You can buy a place on the waiting list, and you've got your spot on the waiting list, and we've sold it to Underhill and Jericho, basically. We pre-sold units. And that's also a big benefit to a bank. You go into a bank, I got 50 people who already spent, a few $1,000s to buy onto a waiting list to get into this
We
place.
have a bank.
We also have,
Union Bank.
yeah, we've been talking with Union Bank. I was talking with David Silverman up there. That is interested in financing us when we get to that point, so
People, one of the things that we're looking for people that participate.
right.
So. Like if people have different skills, like one of the people who was interested is a landscape artist. So, well, if she helps us make this work. She's got a foot in the door. It's almost like the right of refusal for her. She's in.
Mhm.
People who help us. Advocate for us, it's part of a participatory content that people don't just want, There's a
Although
lot,
we need some money.
yes, we do.
Don't put down the money. We need money, Bill. We still need
But
money.
there's a lot of talent here,
Mhm.
and we'd like to use it to actualize this.
So that said, the analysis to try to zero in on the area that we were talking about, I just basically worked from the sort of middle two quartiles of income and work with that population. So the upper quartile, we figure they're moving to Wake Robin or whatever. They can do whatever they bloody well please, and there are a million places trying to cater to them and take care of them. And the lower end, we got, Section 8, we got Jerry Hill, providing that sort of thing and so on. There's a whole other bunch of programs. So we figured kind of the middle of the income distribution to try to hit that. That's also probably where most of us more or less fall. So I was interested in doing it that way. Like I said, the estimated market for senior-oriented, non-assisted units. To do that, there's a thing called activities of daily living rating, and we got some estimates from some published sources associated with that. So people who needed really a lot of, I think it was less than 4 we were looking at for that. People didn't need a lot of assistance with stuff, but maybe some minor, help tying shoes or something like that. So that said, we found that there was a market, there would be, based on that, a market for actual uptake that was based on, and this is not just this is the population, but an actual uptake of 109 units. This was done like in 2017 or 16 when I originally did this analysis. So in 2020, there would be a market for 109 units and 135 units by 2030 based on the demographic information that we had in the projections. We just basically, the 50 came from half of 109. That's where the 50 came from. That we figured that we would be looking at that. So it may not be the best way to do it, but it seemed to be a reasonable approach to dealing with it. So that's where the 50 came from. There's little or no direct competition at this point. Jerry Hill's the only other senior, housing arrangement around. They have it at the time, they had a 2.5-year wait, and it's a Section 8 arrangement. It's a low income, specifically low income associated with it. At the time, we were projecting about $400,000 units. We are beginning to rethink that a little bit, but keeping it under 5, we're still trying to do that, because otherwise we're going to start losing people associated with that. Yeah, us among others. I won't be able to live in my own housing development. And, basically, any developments in the market since then have really only enhanced the marketability associated with this. Basically, what we said before, you can pretty much sell whatever you've got on the market at this point.
So this was, you did this analysis you did around 2020 or?
Well, 2016, 17, 2017.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
All right. So in 2020, the median house price in Jericho was 375,000.
Right.
And that, in order to afford that, there's an analysis that looks at median annual income.
Right.
To afford that median house price in Jericho at the time, which was 2020, would have been 100,000 a year, plus the ability to pay 33,000 down. So you were already, even if this was a 2020 analysis, you are already dealing with higher than median income.
Yes.
And now, yeah, probably even more, right?
It could very well be.
Hoping to offset it. Now, one of the things, well, there's money around now, but it's like, maybe we can get some, maybe not, it's not even. We were hoping that commercial would help. But we've been warned away from that some of the attempts to, doing it with the bottom floor of commercial haven't necessarily worked out. So we're in a quandary. We may have some units that are going to be in the commercial. They have high ceilings. We could sell.
Oh, I'm sure. You just have to take the affordable off that line.
Well, we are not giving up.
We're calling it affordable middle income.
You're right. No, absolutely. That's, there's definitions for affordable. And
Oh, yeah.
even if you stretch that,
Yep.
to say middle,
really a word
what I'm
that's-
saying
it's
is
a
above
freighted
middle
word.
income.
Yeah.
I would stick with middle income.
Okay.
Middle income is fine, but what I was pointing out is that
Yeah.
you're a little above,
Yeah, that's
above
true.
that range.
That's a good suggestion.
Who knows what 3 years is gonna do.
Yeah, and we're working
Yeah.
very hard to come up with
Sure.
write downs and offsetting, grants to build things, develop our septic systems and, partnering at HVDC to try to tap into grant sources and anything we can do to, bring prices down. We're working like the Dickens to try to find that sort of thing. And that's one of the things, that's one of the approaches we're trying to take for doing it. So it's gonna be the hard nut for us to crack. But we're aware of it, we're working on it, and we're hopeful that there will be some options out there to help us get through it.
Were you looking at any rental units or are these all?
Right now, we're not sure. The basic mental concept has been condo units. Now, it's possible that Wisdom House itself would buy some of those condo units and rent them. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility. We've talked about some other things with, since it is Greg Tatro and so on. I don't know if you're aware. We'll sort of get back to that, loop back to that in a minute, but Jenna's Promise has had some, has people working for them and then the addiction thing. And we don't know if there may be something we want to do associated with them.
Those are really expensive rental units.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
$3,000 a month in rent.
Yeah. The other thing about rentals is there's so many protections for renters that it's hard to get people to leave even if they aren't paying the rent.
Right.
And it's a real drawback to we like the rental idea that people are hedging their bets in their older years, and renting is a little less daunting an idea than selling your house and putting all your chips into the Wisdom House basket. So I personally, I like the rental idea, but the pitfalls are really daunting.
Yeah, I think it would get the lower end of, if you want multi-generational, you want some young couples in there, it might have.
Gonna have to do
done that.
something, and then we don't know yet.
We have to figure this out,
Yeah.
that whether, we've been advised that, you know, that rental is a real important aspect to this problem, but housing people, but there are drawbacks. And, we're gonna keep talking about it, talking with,
Right. This is the-
Cathedral Square, they don't do it.
No, they do rentals, they don't do condos.
Is
They
that,
only do rentals. That's why weren't doing anything with.
we're getting opinions.
Right, we are actively pursuing it, so, I mean, you guys are, as I was telling us day before, you're kind of on the ground floor, you've got. Things, good ideas that can, help us bring this online, boy, we love to have them, and we are definitely looking to partner with the town in every way possible.
Are you ready for comment? Is this your last?
Oh, no,
Okay.
we're not there by any.
You can comment as we
You
go.
can, yeah, but do comment or say something as we go, so.
Oh, I'm gonna save it.
Oh, okay, you can unload on
Move
us at
along.
the end. So, next one, I wanted to talk a little bit about the services. We are gonna be handling seniors here. And we're not trying to do it in terms of an institutional assisted living arrangement. We're looking at basically with a combination of a network of interpersonal interactions, dealing with physical and mental health. I mean, one of the things that people have identified as one of the biggest problems for people is kind of loneliness, isolation, what have you. I mean, this alone is a major piece of what we're doing. We're providing access to things with people and people who know what's going on with you and be able to help you with all sorts of things. But then in addition to that, bringing in other services, transportation network, enhancing the transportation network through a mutual transportation network. We're looking at the possibility of car share arrangements, maybe even a formal car share node, so that everybody doesn't even have to own a car. Obviously, transit associated with it, the ride share situation. And a thing called the village model for services. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It came out of Beacon Hill a while back. Some people decided they wanted
I know
to keep
that.
living on Beacon Hill. And they didn't want to move to assisted living, but they needed some help living. So they said, what do we do? Well, we'll just get together and hire people to come in and help us. We'll pool our resources and get people to come in. And there is already a village arrangement active here. In fact, we prevailed on them to extend their service area or their activity area to Jericho. When we were looking at this, they were going to do Underhill and Cambridge, but the Mount Mansfield Villages group is a village-based, this village style, which pools resources and gets services and makes the services available to folks. There are other also things like SASH. My wife was a SASH nurse for us, services and something at home to provide health assistance, visiting nurses, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things that can be coordinated and services provided on what I'm calling, roughly a software basis as opposed to a hardware basis with the actual institutional pieces. So that's kind of where we're shooting on that. We are looking at having an on-site administrator of some sort to help us with both the operations for the whole Wisdom House unit arrangement, and also with the services and how they would be brought in. So would not necessarily have to be a full-time. We might wind up sharing that sort of thing. So,
We also want to reach out to the larger community that's not living with us, but
right.
we feel like if you're a senior and you're in our circle, then we consider you to be part of this idea.
So
Sorry, my computer's freaking on.
see what we can do with that. So moving right along. We are talking about extending it out into the community. There are a lot of ways that this will be a community service as well as just a service for us. Obviously, 50 housing units is a fairly significant contribution to what's going on. The non-residential vitality associated with it, and we're specifically calling out food and the arts. Talk a little bit about that a little further down the line. And supporting this basic community vision that the community is trying to deal with here and realize here, this community center, this village center, and also reach out for specific kinds of things we talked about. Link with the Genesis Promise folks. Bill was talking about linking up with other seniors associated with this. There are lots of opportunities that we'll be able to use this as a nucleation point for helping out with other issues associated with the community because of what we're delivering for ourselves. So these you'll probably recognize. SJ was very kind to allow us to borrow some of you guys' slides. Jericho has an active affordable housing committee, just in case you weren't aware of it. And so we wanted to call out, obviously we couldn't do the whole analysis associated with this, but we did want to call out a couple of things that you highlighted. One was, and I picked this slide to do it, was identifying some of the needs that I thought it was really interesting because, you know, the things that are on this slide are inability of seniors to stay where they're here. I'm hearing people want their kids to be able to have a place to live. Now, it's unlikely the kids are going to buy directly into this place, but when we've got 30 to 50 households moving out of their homes elsewhere locally, that's going to open that up to other people to be able to move into them. And even if that's too much, then people could move up to those and free up. So it becomes a supply demand solution as opposed to, you know, build this and serve this, but it becomes a supply demand 50 units of housing that wouldn't otherwise be there. And
It's going to help our schools.
Going to help, yeah, a lot of things that's going to be associated with it. So we would, that obviously is the case. And then just plain numbers. Obviously Jericho was identified as having constructed over the past 5 years, 50 units. We're talking about building 50 units in this one single development. And Jericho is looking at 70 additional units. We'd go a long way in Wisdom House alone to meeting that need for what you're trying to accomplish associated with it. And like I said, it becomes a supply demand piece. This actually begins to be reflected down the line and open up other places for people to live. So we think it's going to make a nice contribution to the housing situation. I want to talk just very briefly about the non-residential side of this. Those of you who have had any familiarity with commercial businesses or services or that kind of thing. No, it's not the easiest thing to build and sustain businesses, and some removed from central areas, that sort of thing. And so we're looking at ways that we might be able to do that. We have identified, I have had some experience in doing this in other locations, identified 2 areas that seem to have some significant promise. Those are food and the arts. Both of those have the ability to become draws for other businesses as opposed to need the other businesses quite as much for them to survive. So they become the anchors and the draws. And to look at the Highland Center for the Arts and Greensboro, for God's sake, it's all you can do. We need a GPS to find it. And yet it draws people in and provides that kind of nucleation point. Look at farmers markets all over the area. So food kinds of situations and restaurants can also do have the potential to operate without being part of something specifically. Now they can benefit from it in certain instances, but so in any case, we're looking at food and the arts, transition down Jericho, is looking at opportunities for building food situations and so on. So we're hoping that we'll be able to pull these things in and work with these folks to helping bring these things on.
There's a vibrant art and craft community in this area.
Yes.
And that's the previous picture showed. That's my gallery in the web, Artisan Stand in Montpelier. So we've been in business 44 years. Michael and I wanted to make one of those there, and it could be supported by local artisan crafts people. I mean, there's a lot of
stuff going on around here that could be the nucleation point for something non-residential. So, okay, coming around the bend here. What happens now? The first thing, and I think that this is really quite important, we're looking for a different arrangement with the town and with what's going on than is traditional with the way development occurs. Development, as most people are probably aware, becomes, I call it the propose and dispose approach to development. A developer goes off in a corner, tries to figure out what he or she wants to do, does a whole bunch of stuff, then does a whole bunch of work, comes kind of hat in hand, puts it on the table, and says, this is what I want to do. And basically, the first answer is almost always, can't do that. So it's back and you try to do something else, try to figure out what's going on separately, come back in and say, well, that's a lot closer, but you're still not quite. So we are trying to avoid this. We want a full partnership with the town. We actually started this way when this project came online. We had in this room, we had Greg Tatro, his engineer,
Our architects.
Rick Hamlin, we had our architects, Bill Gardner, who is a Jericho resident, and Lisa Kilcoyne were working here, and also the town planning and zoning folks. At the time, Todd was sitting in on this too, and we started hammering out ways to deal with these things. And I think that this is the way that we can look to optimize a solution, because what winds up happening when you go in with this propose and dispose, you start lopping things off, is the way that things happen. So instead of getting more, you solve the problem by getting less. So we're looking for the collaborative partnership, with Greg Tatro and us and the town and, the professionals associated with it, and really sort it out. This is what we're looking at, how do we make this work? What's not working? How do we make it work? As opposed to what have I got to lop off and that. So in addition to that, we need to address any impediments to the realization. And those of you who had the opportunity to see our presentation to JCDC realize that there are some issues with the zoning for making things work, et cetera, et cetera. So, but we need to address these impediments. Septic needs to be dealt with. We need to resolve the septic issue. We're working with Greg and his engineer on that. So we're working on that. So that's the supportive infrastructure, including water and wastewater. And we're pursuing as best we can any source of funding and write downs to keep things. And I put affordability here, but I can see to try to keep prices reasonable, to try to keep prices within a range that people will be able to actually work with them. And the goal is to realize the vision that the town has set out with us and Greg and so that's it. That's who we are. We're also working on a website, so we'll be able to put a website address in there, but that has not yet seen the light of day because I'm the one trying to be this cook and bottle washer, and I've been doing other stuff.
One important thing that Michael didn't mention is that we actually have a contract with it.
A letter of intent. Yeah.
Okay.
We have a
His signature is on a piece of paper
with us.
with ours.
Yes.
And I've checked it.
This is with Tetro.
Yes.
Yeah, he spoke very highly of you guys at a presentation I listened to.
Great.
Oh, that's great. That's great, because we think a lot of the family. And I don't know if you all know this sort of union of common interest that was happening in this room that Michael mentioned. When Greg's daughter died and then COVID came, this was a flash. And so, and we said to Greg when he said, I don't have any bandwidth. And we said, well, we'll help you with Jenna's promise. And until you feel better about it, and then you'll come back to us. And he signed this thing. And my group, Artisan Stand, has been helpful, for instance, up there. And I like volunteers and we're holding our end of the deal with Greg, trying to help him make Jenna's promise more successful.
So I think that we can maybe discuss this for 5 or 10 minutes, but if we need more time, if the committee has questions and wants to continue this discussion, then hopefully you'll come back. I think that, as you say, this is the
This
beginning
is our
of
summer job.
the project.
You may not have time to do this, but yeah, so we're.
Chuck, did you have a?
Yeah, I think I really like this. I think it's really, it's important. What's this is the kind of project that Jericho has rejected, over and over and over again, and has really kind of designed out of. Basically, Jericho decided in 1968 what its character would be, and has enforced it, since then. And what's really important about this is that you're encouraging people to rethink what housing could and should look like here.
Yeah.
You know, that it's something other than single family homes. I mean, there was in the 1970s and 1980s, they described anything other than a single family home as alternative housing. And that is, clearly, Jericho's, that's in our DNA. When we talk about our character, that's what our character is. And, as you guys are really kind of selling people on the idea, well, you're encouraging people to kind of rethink kind of what's necessary and, what fits where, the whole idea of different stages of life. And I think that's all really, really important. The idea of opening up homes with people who move in there, I think that's great. I worry. I listened to some presentation. I was online. You were presenting it to somebody. I can't remember who, but I felt like there was a bunch of people eager in their room, like finally something's happening, and I'm going to load all my aspirations onto them. Okay,
30 units.
I understand that. I mean, I'm going to load my everything to do with affordability and senior. It's like I'm going to load everything onto these poor schmucks. Okay, and right, and I encourage you to and most like affordable or lower cost housing plans that Jericho comes up with require the builder and the homeowner to make all the sacrifice. It's like not a community charge. It's something that gets laid upon solely on the developer, and then it doesn't happen. So I encourage you to develop the project that works for the goals that you've laid out. Like that this really be your thing, and that you not end up you're good at asking for advice and getting people's ideas, and you're accumulating, and you're clearly benefiting from all those ideas. But in the end, you've got to do the project that works for you. And I hope that I'll certainly would remind people whenever I'm in a group, and I hope you do. This thing has to work, and it's going to be hard to produce a bunch of $250,000 units. You just can't do it. And the accomplishment from this, in addition to the additional units, but the real impact this is going to have is going to change people's thinking about what's possible. We have stifled our preconditions about how people should live, which were brought here in the 1960s during white flight, has really stifled innovation. And you're bringing innovation to a community that hasn't seen any, in a long time. And so I hope you don't get buffeted by kind of all these aspirations. This needs to be one of 10 things that happens in Jericho. Okay, it can't be like the only thing. And it's intensely personal to you guys. So when it comes to like the zoning, the zoning obstacles are not something that you can, there's not little workarounds on some of these zoning problems. And ultimately, I hope that you present something that people want so much that they're willing to take a serious look at the zoning obstacles. Like you are, like, in terms of what I'm working on, you're like the perfect case at the perfect time to make the case that we've got to change. We've got to change our regulations here. And at some point, this is going to become a political thing where you're going to have a design. You're going to have something that people want that can't get done.
We already do.
Right.
Rules.
Right. And so, I encourage, I'll partner with you on that.
Windows, there's all kinds of things in here.
Or just making stuff. Being able to make stuff.
The makerspace part.
One of the things we're not great, we didn't.
And that's new. That was 2015
Yeah.
when they made it illegal to make things for sale with hand tools.
Yeah.
And 23 new regulations on the placement of a window.
Right.
And I encourage you to design the project you want, and then let's
That's the way we're going
Let's-
about it.
and that benefit, okay? It might be tough, but you're the perfect test case, and that will benefit
Everything.
the whole town, and hopefully, I mean, Underhill's worse than Jericho. Hopefully it'll affect Underhill a little bit.
One of the things we didn't talk about, because it sounds a little dreamy maybe, but we have ideals about this. I mean.
It's clear, it's obvious.
This isn't such a, an L3C says it.
Right.
But like, for instance, we hope to have a little Jimmy's up to the high school. Have arrangements with the high school. You want to learn how to cook?
Yeah. Here's one. My dream is that in the ID school, we have preschool, 2 preschools, kindergarten, and special ed expertise, and we have empty classrooms at Browns River. I'd love to see a tech ed program for preschool education there. And now listening to you, I'm thinking, okay, it should be for daycare and early childhood and elder care. Like there's an opportunity for a technical education program, which that kind of thing. I guess the other really important thing is Jericho government doesn't know how to work with you.
We have a
Okay.
new face in government here, though, I think.
I understand, but we don't have what St. Albans has in terms of kind of city government. There's no CFO. We don't know how to deal with development in terms of just like paving the way. So I hope you provide feedback to whoever you're comfortable with. About what does Jericho need to enable? So we're really good at doing studies, and that's how far we've gotten with septic, and then now we're going to actually have to do something. And Jericho doesn't know how to do things because we contract everything out except for planning and the highway crew.
So I need to switch us over to the rest of our agenda.
Yeah.
Before we do though, I just want to make sure that Frederica and Richard, if you have any last thoughts, that you have a chance.
Well, I have one last thought.
Yeah.
We are the Affordable Housing Committee. Affordability is currently defined as median income. Actually, there's a definition there. So, you're here because you want to, you have a desire to serve people with median income. I don't know how you're already realizing that things are going to be more expensive than you would like them to be. And I think there are 2 ways forward with that. One of them is to have some units that are smaller. And the second one is to do what you already are doing, which is going out and seeing where the grants are, where the funding is, where you can find support for developing things that are more affordable specifically, without necessarily having to be perpetually affordable. You had one slide there where you already said 0. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be that, because that comes with a lot of constraints, but some kind of just look in that space if you even want it to be affordable for median income.
I think that's
Because right now you're not.
the one person or the 1 bedroom units in Jerry Hill, I think, are 650 square feet or 700 square feet. They're really small. It has it on their website. I was.
And Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity is primarily building for families. And they build a 3-bedroom home that's 1,200 square feet. So 1,200 feels big to me. In the
Lafayette Drive houses were 960, 3 bedrooms.
So, yeah, I think Frederica is pointing out a couple of things that there may need to be, in order to achieve, you may need to be thinking a little bit more about some diversity within the units that you're building, that you're providing, that can kind of help spread out the cost, and to really look at your sizes. But
Particularly because you're offering third places, people can get out of their house.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't need
You
as
don't
big a
need-
place if you can.
yeah,
One thing you might want to write down, because it's part of the driver of what this exterior space will look like. There's a There's a garden in Wayne, Pennsylvania called Chanticleer. Chantecleer. That's our goal
Hmm.
for what to surround this. And we have someone who can help us design it, so I think that's gonna be real.
And we're looking at, for example, providing a couple of sort of residential units like hotel rooms.
Mm.
So when guests come, you don't have to have a separate bedroom
But
for guests.
how big are the apartments in Burlington and the, you know, kind of the new construction?
Yeah.
Are they that big? Are they 1,200?
I don't think most of them are.
Yeah.
Getting down. Like I said, that was a point of departure. It wasn't a point of arrival.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, it's where we kind of started.
I think Frederica's making a good point, though. you know,
Yeah, it was a very good point. Yes, I agree.
Thinking about the size.
Yeah, yeah.
It may be a way to get more income per
Yeah,
square
we've
foot.
definitely been moving in that direction. No question about that.
Well, thank you and definitely welcome you back as you get further along in this process and maybe we can continue the discussion.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
And, you know, we will be making some recommendations to the planning commission about zoning and at various stages over the next year to 2 years. And so, you know, if I've got the document from
JCDC.
no, Hamlin, George.
Oh, yeah, Hamlin and, yeah.
Mhm, and I can't
Rick
remember
Hamlin and.
if I forwarded
Bill
that to you, Chuck and Frederica.
Yeah, he
or
checked.
not. Okay, so we've got that document, but as we move along, and as you move along, we should be having conversations about.
Definitely.
We were advised at one point, and I don't want to take any more of your time, but there was a Paul Giuliani, who is now passed, was one of our advisors, and he suggested a sort of a tax
Municipality and kind of district
a
here,
bond
bonding
that
district
could fund the
infrastructure, basically. Yeah.
The tip.
Hmm?
I don't think
Not
it was a tip. It had a different quality to it, and that was one of the things I found interesting, because so many people have been running into problems with tips for one reason or another, and it seems like it should work better.
But this is an example of the kind of thing that you need to be able to ask someone in town government
Yeah,
to go figure out and come back and explain it to you. I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
but we definitely would love to bring it to them. and
Chris,
say, yeah,
Lynn, you think?
that's not like John. to me.
You know, Flint, they're not developers.
Yeah, well, Chris is actually, that's his background, I guess.
Okay, you can.
Yeah, I guess his background was.
He's been very friendly. Everyone's been friendly.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But
Well,
anyway,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and you're welcome to stay, but also.
Yeah, I think,
It's late.
I got a website to build and a few other things. to do.
thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, and please, Michael, send me
One of your
the
partners
PDF
died.
I will.
so I can share it.
No, he's a maybe last.
Oh, okay.
Paul Giuliani. Yeah, he's a.
That's the one in Fairfax.
All right, so the next agenda item is reviewing and approving the work plan for the 2023-2024 session. I tried to kind of summarize the discussion that we had at the last meeting and some of the goals that we've discussed over the last couple of months, generally sent that out. I'd accept a motion to approve. And then if there are any edits, we can discuss that before taking a vote.
So moved.
Thank you, President. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. All right. Open it up for discussion. Is there any?
After so moving, I have to find it. Where is it? Put in the agenda? No. Do you know where you had it? Because I can't find it.
I'm gonna share it.
Also, I tried to get into the meeting just so I can project something. So I'm in queues now.
So this is kind of based on our charter. And the way this is laid out is some broad goals that we've all discussed about, and then some specific deliverables down at the bottom. I don't want to
Right.
go through this in super detail, but I'm happy to.
I think we need to get those zoning recommendations sooner. I mean, if their plan is to finish the plan by the end of the year.
Yeah.
For them to do the plan without input from us.
The plan and the zoning recommendations are two separate things.
Well,
The
I think that-
plan sets the stage for the zoning
Right,
changes.
right. But if we were going to have a discussion on whether we are going to partner with West Bolton on a village district,
Mhm.
that's an example of something that is, should be part of the plan. That I feel like one informs the other. I think waiting.
Yeah, there's an example for that where we already did the housing target resolution,
Mhm.
and that came out of our committee to the planning committee,
Mhm.
and it's going to inform the town plan. And then that in turn is going to inform us and how we do other recommendations. So I think it is a little bit of a back and forth, and I think that if we present them with zoning proposals that we all think are a good idea, that might also influence the town.
I mean,
One of the important things is, we're emphasizing is the need to finish up the natural resource overlay map and just get them done. So for us to make a lot of zoning changes, that needs to be done in place.
so if there are
And the
things
plan-
that need to be in the town plan that in order to set the stage for some of the zoning changes that you think are important, then that conversation needs to be part of the input in the town plan discussion.
Recording in progress.
So, yes. Yes, the two are linked, but presenting them with the zoning changes that you want is not appropriate for a discussion about the town plan. Presenting them with the goal that the zoning changes will achieve is appropriate.
Okay,
Discussion.
Yeah,
with the
and
town plan.
I think that's it. Pretty much what we're saying. We're not saying, okay, change this line, which is kind of what we're in a sense working on. But that might be a little further down the line in the back and forth.
Mhm.
But providing input on what kind of impediments there are in the current regulations, which are informed by the past town plan. So the current regulations informed by the past town plan have some impediments to the kind of affordable development that we're looking for, and pointing that out.
So if you feel, what I'm hearing you say is that engaging with the town plan process as we have up to this point, or as individuals, is not sufficient, and you would like to put together a proposal to present to them.
Yeah.
So one of the two.
So, and they are saying that they want to have a draft done by July.
Yes, we've been working, the town plan updates have been happening regularly with
Right.
working sessions and community forums and
Right.
planning commission meetings. So, yeah, they have 2 more work sessions on the books. One of them being infrastructure related and one of them being local economy. Whether it's appropriate at that those working sessions.
Or maybe we need to go meet with the planning commission
Or
separately.
you need to, yeah.
It's a little bit like Lucy's football.
A
It's
time
like-
to go.
We work on the zoning regs and say, oh, well, this is just introduced to just implement the town plan. So the conversations on zoning is limited then, and then, oh, we're redoing the town plan, but oh, we can't talk about zoning until after it's done. It's just a big game.
It's not that you can't talk about it. I mean, one of the reasons, but they're not going to be talking about it and focusing on it. They're not
Right.
planning to get any of the work done. So our job was, okay, well, let's make sure that when they're ready to turn their attention to it,
Right.
we're ready to show
Yeah.
them, these are what we need from an affordable housing standpoint.
Absolutely,
Right, and part
but
of-
the way I understand it, it's kind of like a back and forth because the zoning regulations follow the town plan. So if we want to propose changes to the zoning regulations down the line, they have to be concordant with the town
They
plan.
have to be concordant with the goal.
So if we're already having thoughts about affordable housing and how the current regulations might have impediments to it, then shouldn't we in turn proactively let them know so that they can, the planning commission can see if they want to fine tune their town plan so that it will then be enable us to speak to that by, you see, it's kind of a back and forth.
And if,
So I don't know
if you're gonna,
So-
if you're gonna continue with the town villages as is, okay, with that goal, here are the zoning changes.
I don't think that that's clear.
Well,
And
Right,
that's what the
Well-
town plan,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
they are discussing.
Right,
That's
but-
why we
Right.
need
I understand that, but,
Participate.
right, but if you want to concentrate development in a certain place, here are the sacred cows that you're going to have to address. You can't do the same town plan with the same goal without making major changes to the zoning. And they need to know that upfront. I mean, right now,
And they do. I mean, I think that we're saying the same thing. So what is your ask?
The ask is to have a presentation to the planning commission earlier than winter 2023-24.
before the plan's done.
That contains our thoughts on zoning, and they can be as granular or non-granular as you think is appropriate. But they shouldn't be just Chuck and I, but it should be coming from the housing committee. So, but that we have some date earlier than winter 23, meaning when the draft is still under development, so that
So-
if they hear something new that they haven't considered, it may still influence the town plan, because that in turn will make it possible for us to do what we want to do
So recommendations for zoning changes
down the line.
are a thing for winter.
Yes,
That's fine. So you're asking for a new deliverable, which is totally fine. And I think needs to be discussed with Linda to find out when you can get on a planning commission
Sure.
agenda. I'm
not, and it should be something that we've talked about before we go to the planning commission
okay,
as
so
a group.
we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting. And that falls, so in June, they're doing local economy and whatever the other thing is, infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean,
So
whenever
it's,
we
you
can-
know, it's late, but they're still entertaining these conversations, and July is a draft.
Mhm.
So you want to put together something for the June, for our June meeting.
Mhm.
That sounds great.
Okay,
So are you asking that we add to summer 2023 a proposal for the town
Presentation.
plan?
Mhm.
Okay,
I mean, we've spent a lot of time studying the rules. And if they're not willing to change the rules, then they need to change the plan. Because the plan assumes that something's going to happen, which is currently impossible. And so they need to be willing, they need to say, okay, there's not going to be infill in the preponderance of houses in the village district are sitting on 1/2 acre lots.
so,
so that gets to the next agenda item, I think.
yeah, so, okay, so with that amendment, do we feel like we're ready to pass
We put a presentation to the,
presentation to
In
TC
September.
for town plan on summer 2023?
Mhm.
Okay. So all those in favor say aye. Thank you. All right, zoning, go ahead.
All right, just to pick up where we just left off.
Yeah.
So the premise here is that we want to find ways to create more housing that is affordable, and the definition of the current statement, not looking to change the definition, which is basically median income. Plus minus, we already talked about this. A classic, the past emphasis has been on focusing the housing in the villages, village district and village center district. And that's not just a Jericho priority, that's also kind of a state of Vermont Regional Planning Commission priority. There's two impediments to that. One of them is, so we all agree that all that land in this area is already privately owned, right? There's no, most of the land that we were talking about is already privately owned. So what's the impediment? Why hasn't this happened? Although we have, rules there in place that could permit more housing in those areas. There's two reasons. One of them is that possible reasons that one of them is that the people that currently own the land can't build more housing because of some problem with the rules. And the other one is that they don't want to build more housing. They have the land, but there's no reason for them to build more housing because they're happy with what they've got. We think the latter one is actually pretty common in the village centers. The people that own the land don't really have necessarily an intention to do anything with it. And if that's true, then maybe we have to expand the zone where you can do the kind of central development that you want. So that's why we're thinking a little bit beyond just the village centers. And we're thinking about this triangle that defines the area between those three village centers, seeing if we should change zoning in that area to more closely approximate zoning in the village center. So that's basically one core idea. The other idea goes to the land owners that currently own the land in the village centers. Some of them might want to subdivide or sell part of their land, but they can't. And the solution for that is to change some rules that keep them from doing that. And one way of doing that is to decrease lot sizes. So in an area that has a 1 acre lot size, we could decrease the lot size to like a half an acre. And we were even thinking you could go down to 1/8 of an acre in some areas. So that's the other core proposal for the village center area. So those are basically the two core proposals for the where we want the densest development.
In the triangle.
Yeah. And
Good news is that's very consistent with
Yeah.
what the planning commission has been
Right.
talking about for
Yeah.
the new town plan.
yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
So then we can help them by kind of reinforcing that and maybe kind of making clear where the impediments may lie, just to be sure that when they change the town plan, they're going in that direction.
Yeah.
There's other areas of Jericho that we think might also be appropriate for denser development. And those are areas close to major roads, like at the bottom of Skunk Hollow, for example, along 117. There's not much development that can happen right along 17, but there's some areas that intersect with 117, like Skunk Hollow, where it can happen, or Barber Farm down there. Over in West Bolton, where there's already pretty dense settlement patterns. And those would be that the idea there would be to kind of reduce shift the zones from, say, the 3 acre zone to a 1 acre zone, or from 10 acre zone to a 3 acre zone, or whatever there is. So that was another thought. The problem with that is if you take the 3 acre zone and you just say, okay, we want more land because 3 acres are too expensive. Nobody can afford to buy 3 acres. So we want to turn it all into 1 acre lots. If you were to say that, then the developers would say, that's great. I'm going to buy a 1 acre lot and I'm going to build a $500,000 house on it. And that wouldn't serve us at all. So there would have to be something in addition to that would incentivize denser development, but also more affordable development. And there's two ways of doing that. One of them is to change the PUD rules. So if you have a PUD in a 3-acre zone that has 10 houses in it, you need 30 acres for it. We could reduce that land requirement for if they build units that are small and thus more affordable. So and we were thinking square feet. So for a house that's less than a certain square footage, they would need only they would only need 1.5 acres to go with it. So that would be one idea to create more affordable housing in a PUD. The other idea is this thing with the overlay, the district overlay, the housing district overlay, that would kind of superimpose more lenient rules if they are used for affordable housing, is how I understand that. That we need to know more about, and also need to know why that wasn't the popular idea the last time it was presented. But those are basically the two major ideas of how to change affordability in the more rural areas where people might also want to live.
Yeah.
And then we had like more concrete ideas about things like permit fees. So that's about 4 things. I forget the other 2. There were like 2 more that we had.
Road frontage.
Road frontage, like if we do 1/8 acre in the village centers, we would need to change the road frontage requirement, and we could basically we'd have to talk to people to see if we can get rid of it altogether, or just make it minimal, especially if there's infill. So if you have infill, then, you know, if you have like a 1/4 acre and you subdivide it into an 1/8 acre, then it might be the other house might not have the road frontage that is currently required. So we need to change or eliminate road frontage.
So right now, a 1,000 square foot house that's 2 stories is 500 feet square, which is 22 by 22. Why do you need 75 feet of road frontage in the village center?
Yeah.
Those kinds of rules, and or in the village area. I think the other thing was the multifamily housing.
Oh, yeah, that's easy. Yeah, that was kind of the starter. Is just currently multi-family housing is greater than 3 units or greater than 2 units is not permitted outside of.
More than 2
Yeah,
units.
duplexes are everywhere now, but
Yeah,
even bigger than a duplex.
so we would just shift the zoning use regulations over so that more multi-family housing would be permitted in all zones.
I don't think it's I don't think it's a reason to shut down the conversation, although some people use it that way. But I think another reason why the denser housing is difficult is because of septic and
Right.
wells.
And
But
that won't
septic
change,
is-
that's totally independent of the zoning regulations.
Agreed.
So, but this is a pushback that you're gonna hear again and again, where people are gonna say, this is impractical. You can't turn that part of the triangle into a 1-acre zone because you don't have septic there. And we're like, yes, you can. You just can't build there, but you can still have the zoning regulations, because we're not just talking about the next couple of years, we're talking about the next 5 to 10 years. And who knows where the septic is going to be down the road. So septic, to me, that's independent. I mean, at least as far as I can see. I mean, if you want to be reasonable, you can say, okay, we don't want to develop all of Jericho as densely as these areas, because it's just not going to, fly with all the natural resource
I agree.
limitations and all that.
I think it's a way that people shut down the
Yes.
conversation, and I think it is completely independent of regulation.
Yeah.
Where I do think it comes into play is when you start to ask questions like yours, Chuck, which is a good one, which is how realistic, how much can we expect to gain from infill if it were even to happen? Because of A, where is it even possible? Okay, we can change the regulations, but B, where is it possible because of septic and all these other things that get in the way of
Repeating-
infill? Again, infill is not the answer.
Also, whether something, a septic permit and a water permit are independent of zone,
Yes,
and we need to see it that way. We can't be regulating septic with zoning.
Yep.
And you can have community septic systems. You can have a development that has a shared system. Another reason why I think we need to be interacting with the planning commission is that plan should have where septic and water are going. And if they don't, it's not done.
Yeah,
And-
but even if they
and
don't
that
get that far, we
you-
still,
Well, they should, they shouldn't finish the plan until they have it. I mean, that's like the central thing right now. And if the plan is like, well, we're gonna study it, no one should approve it. And
July,
what?
they're gonna have a draft in
I don't know,
July.
but the study is in, we have, the originals, the first,
The
Study.
wastewater should be done August, so they should have the wastewater report by the time the final plan is done.
yeah, and that that and our work needs to, I mean,
We can do it without that, but it would be great if it was.
yeah, I mean,
national.
for example, if we want a lot of infill in the village triangle, we have to make it possible for someone to subdivide a half-acre lot that has a house in the middle of it.
Mhm.
And unless you're willing to do that, take infill out of the plan.
So infill goes in the plan. Subdividing, being able to subdivide an acre lot with a house in the middle of it goes in regulations,
Goes where?
in regulations.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But don't say at some point you have to say, don't say your plan is infill unless you're willing to do this.
Yeah, so let's
Okay.
get them to say infill so that they're on the hook, so that then we can point to that.
That's
and
already
say,
happened. That's already happened. It's been happening over and over and over again. They've been talking infill in the village center with 1 acre lots. For
I
multiple generations. And so unless they have the stomach and the determination to say, we're going to make this change, they have to see, and the select board have to see these things as parallel, this, and then also the plan on the water and the
I
Sewer.
believe that this planning commission sees it that way. And is willing to go to bat along with us. To push the select board to make good on what the town plan commits them to. And I understand that, yes, we've had this in the town plan forever and. We're all still sitting here trying to solve the problem. I get that. It's also the tools that we have available to us and how they work. So. This is what we're doing.
So what we don't really have a lot of answers for yet is the Riverside district. Something ain't right about that. There's some good things about it. Multifamily housing is allowed in part of it. They're nice drawings that have very little to do with what the landscape looks around here. Also include some multifamily houses, so that's promising. And so, their development that they're talking about, 3 stories is allowed in where they're talking about it. And the number of units might, they don't specify it, but that kind of housing looks like it could fly. But the details that it requests, the micromanagement of the character of what this is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
I don't know that it isn't kind of a deal breaker for most development.
It is for these guys.
They're trying to work with it, and their hope, it sounded like, is just to talk somebody into it, but that would be against what's on paper, so it's hard to imagine.
Well, and the good news is that I think. Everybody. I think that the town is invested in trying to make something happen there. Finally, and I think that they've got a lot of hope in the wastewater study. And Tetra is coming back to the table. It feels like conversations are starting again. And everyone, or many people, are aware of and talking about just what you're pointing out.
Yeah.
That code
Our
is
recommendations.
really a barrier to development that they want to see
Right.
and needs to be,
simplified.
So I think one thing that should be in the town plan is that the regulation, the
It's a big change and it
Should, should that these these special 75 pages of extra regulations for this part of town should sunset by a certain date if they're not revised. I mean, just put a fuse on it. You know, we had this meeting with Tom Baraball, which I thought was really good about the natural resources overlay and the idea that we would wait on smaller lot sizes until that's done. There ought to be a fuse on that. Like the town plan, you know, it ought to be, you know, we'll hold off on something. So, you know, there needs to be like a date certain on some of this stuff.
It's an interesting idea. So we'll talk to Linda and see. My suspicion is that their meetings are pretty jam-packed for June already. So here's my suggestion. My suggestion would be to prepare, and we can all work together to prepare these recommendations in a written document that, yes, should go along with a presentation. I don't know that we'll get on their
Well,
meeting
they can either
calendar
hear it now,
before
they
the
can hear
draft.
public comments.
So putting together a written document that we can get to Linda and David and Susan as soon as possible.
Mhm.
And then that we are prepared, and by we, I mean you guys, because you've done the work, prepared to, when they discuss draft one, be prepared to address these things in that draft. And say, it's missing this, you need to consider this should be here.
Yeah, town plan has a lot of pages, right? We won't really know where to look.
So the
That's
new
why it
town
would be.
plan will not,
No,
and you
like
know,
how
as
much
soon as the draft-
preparation is that gonna take for us to figure out exactly where they didn't say what I mean, they know their town plan.
Well,
we
you know
know-
what you want to
Yeah,
say,
we know what we want to say and they,
so. I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be put it here, but
yeah.
this is what needs to be happening, and they'll be going through that draft in a public session, in a public meeting where we, and again, you should be prepared to be able to say, hey, point to the document that you submitted to them with recommendations, and then be able to say, this would go really well in the draft or in the town plan right here.
Mhm.
Just because of where we are time-wise.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna be a 300-page town plan like what we currently have. There will be 2 volumes. One volume will be kind of the goals and the action items and, you know, the vision statements. And then the second volume will be, you know, the charts and the pages and pages of historical context and facts and figures. And so I don't think it will be as onerous. And there'll be a housing section and a land use section. Okay, so this will take up, we'll use our June meeting to talk about this and get this figured out.
Yeah, I mean, we can present what I presented, but in more like written or PowerPoint or whatever form.
Yeah.
But that's basically the gist of it.
And it's
Not, you know, and again, it doesn't point to line so and so and line so and so. We can do that too. But that's not right now what we just want to kind of explain the logic of it.
yeah. And I think it's very in line with all of the discussions that they've been having. It doesn't sound
Are they talking about the West Bolton idea?
not the West Pole. They talked about in addition to the triangle, looking at the zoning of the towns that we border and
Yeah, that's-
making more of a transition
That's the
between,
same thought.
yeah, making a more of a transition
Mhm.
based on, you know, noting that we're super close to Richmond's town
Mhm.
center. And
Mhm.
so our zoning should reflect that and that
Mhm.
kind of,
Yeah,
so it
we
is
talked
in
about
line.
So they are looking at zoning.
Yeah.
Yes, Chuck. But the specific document that I saw that had specific calculations and figures and changes to the zoning regs are not appropriate. The idea of shifting from a real focus on village center to re-examining the triangle and the broader goals are completely.
So we have
appropriate.
kind of
We are on the
practiced,
same
we have
page.
practiced a couple of different versions of this, and one of them is the big picture, like these should be the goals, and that's what's appropriate. And the other version is, okay, we've got these proposals, 1, 2, 3, and these are exactly how we would like to frame
Yeah.
them. So they both kind of say the same thing, honestly. So they're not that far apart. But whichever one is more acceptable at this stage.
I don't want you to go in front of them and then have them say, this is a zoning conversation and,
Mhm.
and shut it down and not listen to what you have to say.
Yeah,
Um,
right. So we can see whether, when we write it out, whether that message comes across the way you think it should.
and, yeah, and I'll reach out to, I'll just make a note to myself to reach out to Linda about their, agendas for the next couple of meetings. Because I may be wrong.
And we're making our rounds with conservation people, land trust people. We have some builders in mind.
Spoke with Chris Flynn.
Yeah, the builders piece is interesting. I'd love to talk to some builders that have recently built in Jericho and had to interact with the current version of regulations, or who have considered building in Jericho and decided not to.
Right.
And understand from their perspective what is reasonable. There's the conversation with Chris was really informative for a couple of different reasons, but one of them is to really see, like, this is the person who's interpreting the regulations and has to read them to make a decision, and understanding that. And then from the builder side, they're looking at the regulations and trying to put a puzzle together and figure out how their pieces fit within. It's a different perspective. It'll be interesting. Okay. Do you folks need anything else?
You just need, I guess, to be sure that in our June meeting, that won't be after some planning commission meeting.
There will be, we are after, they are first and third, and we are the second. So there will be a PC meeting before us and a PC meeting after us.
Yeah.
What is the best way for us to get David White's help in understanding the housing overlay?
I didn't reply to your email right away because I'm not sure what our access to David White looks like now that he's no longer interim planner and is just working as consultant for town plan.
Yeah.
So I am not sure of whether he's an appropriate person to ask that to. What I might instead recommend is when you see him in passing asking, if off the top of his head he can think of something. But when I talk to Linda, I'll poke around and see it.
And so
She
what,
might make the request to the Chittenden County planning people, because they're not going to respond to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris Flynn was a little, he had to be, he needed the background of why we wanted anything from him.
I thought
So,
Chris was great. It was a good
yeah, he
meeting.
came around for sure.
He was, I learned a lot, and I feel really comfortable going back to him with questions. The one thing we didn't get to with him was getting a look at his plan for the Rivers property, which is separate from this discussion, but I think it would be good for us to.
It's a really, yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of tabling at farmers market, if you all could look at your calendars. And so I think we have So we have access to a booth at the farmer's market. It's an opportunity to do some community outreach, whether that's education or really trying to build a YIMBY campaign, or I don't know, we can throw around ideas about what we
Collect
want to
stories.
use. Collect stories, what we want to use that
Belcher housing
booth
story.
for. The dates are June 8th. We can pick from these. June 8th. Nope, we can't have June 8th. DEI committee took June 8th. July 13th. August 31st. September 14th. And October 5th.
So since there's only us here, maybe if we put those out in email and everybody picks a date,
Yeah,
that might work the
I
best.
can't commit to any Thursdays. That's,
okay.
but I can often do it, but I can't commit to it because that's a regular travel day for me.
Okay. So next meeting, we'll pick one or two of those dates and be thinking about the kinds of things that we'd like to use that booth spot for.
That's at the Jericho Farmers Market?
And we'll probably be sharing the table with another committee, which is another thing that we could be thinking about. Do we want to pick a date where we're sharing the table with the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, or where we are sharing the table with the Planning Commission, for instance? All right. I'm shifting to liaison updates. So I'm gonna put it here. Stacy has a health situation that she's going through that may take her out of commission for the next couple of months. And so I'm wondering if anyone is willing to keep an eye on her. She's Jericho Energy Task Force. If someone is willing to just keep an eye on the Energy Task Force agendas and the activities and meetings that they're doing in case any of it overlaps with our work. And then similarly, the other activity that she's committed to is working with Richard on DRB recs and resources. I think we can hold off making a decision about that until we know more about what her summer is going to look like. But is there anyone that would be willing to just take a look at agendas and planned?
I still have to catch up with the DRB and I still haven't done that. I feel like I'm falling behind my homework.
You're doing a ton of homework. Think you're okay. Would you mind, Richard?
Yeah. I can do
Taking
that.
a look at their agendas online? Thank you.
Yeah, I know it looks like it. It also looks like the Shelburne place.
Is that the
Shelburne
Fairfax?
place.
That's the Fairfax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it looks almost identical. I mean, there's not the mixed use commercial space, or is there commercial space on the first?
I don't think there was in theirs either.
No, well, they weren't, they were saying they weren't sure if it was gonna be commercial,
Yeah.
That's
but yeah, that looks pretty much.
almost identical.
Yeah. I mean, there
Um,
are really large, there are big housing, clusters in all those towns up there. It's just, I've been just starting to think more about, this is like also an anti-sprawl thing. Like sprawl is 10-acre zoning. It's like you're using up
Yes.
10 acres for every house.
Only if you're in the top 5%.
I understand, but it's still sprawl.
Yeah.
Like how many single family homes does this place?
Heinsberg is doing some of this development right
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. They should be supported and, encouraged with what they're trying to do, that vision. Sure.
The JCDC had Habitat for Humanity give a presentation at their last meeting. It was interesting, a good presentation. The one thing that there's lots of interesting things to know about, but the one thing that they talked about was one of the kinds of services that they provide when partnering with a town or with a landowner is the community outreach piece and some of that kind of community planning and getting people on board, which I think is interesting, good to know.
It's kind of an interesting model because I don't know a lot about Habitat for Humanity. I mean, I just have, sort of a vague view of it. But it's similar to stuff that can happen kind of just organically within a family and with a community, within a community of friends. And so, I mean, I think people's attraction to it is that it's like it's familiar territory, sort of the mythical barn raising,
and they do not do rentals, but they build primarily single family up to 4-plex. And they're primarily, they very rarely said they work with couples. It's primarily families.
when you look at the ads for a lot of the houses, like in way back when in the 1970s, for Sunnyview, Pinehurst, places like that, one option was to only buy a house with only the first floor finished.
Mm.
And you would get a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. And you would finish the second floor when you needed it, when you could afford it, or when your brother, the carpenter, was available. Which this sort of has a Habitat for Humanity sort of a sort of a vibe to it.
Any other liaison updates? So the only other thing that I want to bring up for other business, so I've already beat this horse. So June 6th is infrastructure work session. June 20th is local economy work session for a town plan, planning commission meetings. When I send up a follow-up email to tonight's meeting, I'll include the dates for the farmers market, but then I'm also going to include the dates for the summer meetings. There are a lot of times that folks are away during the summer, or unable to come for whatever reason. And I just want to make sure ahead of time that if we know that we've got a meeting, we're not going to meet quorum, that we don't plan for it. And otherwise, the June agenda at this point will primarily be zoning, town plan, stuff, and farmers market.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we need to talk about in June?
That's what is our next meeting date? June
Would
2nd?
be interesting. Was Wayne looking at, I went and looked at that 10 acres the town owns.
Oh, yeah.
It's big. I don't know how much of it's suitable for, it's extremely well loved. It's like a park.
You're right, June 13th.
Yeah, I'm actually out, but I
Yeah,
may be
that's
able
what
to
I-
join remotely.
You're out June 13th.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in Michigan.
Okay.
But it's a little bit up in the air because I just had some news about that, but I was planning on being in Michigan that day, but I may be able to join remotely.
Well, we'll still still do what we can to provide whatever feedback and support we can. Sorry, you said it's like a part. That's what I was feeling. I feel like I've heard folks talking about that land and feeling really protective of it, as if it's communal land, that there's walking trails, and who gets to cut through whose yard in order to use it is hotly
Pick up after
contested.
dog,
And
litter.
where's this?
The town owns 10 acres. Right.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Awesome.